All right, so we're going to start out here, guys, with kind of a simple graph. We're just going to use this data here, okay, to build our first graph in Google Sheets. To open Google Sheets, when you first log in, you look down in the bottom kind of left corner of the screen, you'll see a few icons for the different apps. One of them is green. Okay, it's just kind of a green square. That's Google Sheets. If you click on that, it'll open Google Chrome. Okay, and Google Sheets will be open, which is a spreadsheet. All right. Usually, what it opens is not a file first. It kind of just opens a kind of a welcome screen, and you'll have to press the little circle with the plus sign in it. Okay, that is going to be in the bottom right corner when you get to that. Okay, so yeah, if you hit the apps button there, yeah, it's hit the squares there in the bottom left-hand corner. There's a square made up of little squares. Okay, if you click on that, a whole bunch of the apps pop up, and you click on the one that's Google Sheets and open up Google Sheets that way. All right, now the nice thing about Google Sheets, first off, it's free. Secondly, you don't have to draw graphs by hand. Okay. Thirdly, that's the way all of the graphs you're going to do for your labs and things like that are going to get handed in. Now, I'm going to record everything today, all the instructions on how to do this. So if you forget when you're putting a lab report together, what do? You watch this podcast on how to build graphs using Google Sheets. It'll be lesson 8.1. Okay, so we got to make sure we know how that all works. Okay, so that we're doing those properly. Devin, question? Okay, so once you actually have a spreadsheet open, okay, so I'm just going to open it up on mine here. Okay, I'm just going to open up another one. Okay, so you'll see this little plus sign down here in the bottom. If you have a screen like this, you just click on that and it opens up another one. All right, and we'll just title it, because we're doing a graph on rubber bands. Okay, we'll just call it the rubber band graph. Okay, now we need to enter the data that we had in this chart right here. All right, so what we're looking at here says plot a graph of length versus force for the following experiment done on an elastic band. We want to find the slope, the y-intercept, and the equation of the line. And I'm going to show you how Google Sheets does that for you. It's actually pretty sweet. Okay. So what we're going to say here is this. Okay. We're going to say that the force is the manipulated variable. So it's going to go on which axis? The x-axis. All right. In Google Sheets, the first column you fill in will by default be put on the x-axis. All right. So you want to do your force first. All right. In Google Sheets, and I'll type that in here in just a sec. And then our length of the elastic band will be the responding variable. Everyone follow? Okay. So when we're entering this data, okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay. We're going to open up Google Sheets here. Okay, and we're going to fill in this first column, okay, and we're going to do it just like this. All right, so I'm going to put my title for that data set. Okay, I'm going to call it force. I'm going to put units in there. Okay, and it's a capital N is the abbreviation for newtons. That's the units for force. Okay, and our numbers were 0, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13, right? Went up to 13, if I recall. No, just to 11. All right, we could put the decimals in there, but if you put 0.0, most of the time it just cuts it off anyway. All right, so that's why I didn't put the decimal 0 in there. All right, that means our next column needs to be the length. Okay, so our next column over, we're going to title that length, and that was measured in centimeters, according to the data that we have here. So we got to kind of go back and forth. So our first two lengths are 6.5 and 8.5. Right. Whoops. I think our third one was 12.5, if I recall. Okay, and we'll go back and look at our data again here. 16, 20, so it just goes up by 4s. Okay. So 16.5, right, 20.5, 24.5, and 28.5. Okay, so I'll give you a second here to just catch up with me and get that entered. Okay, now sometimes in a lab report, the lab report is going to want your data chart. Okay, this is your data chart. It just shows all of your data. All right, the way to do that is simply to highlight it, Control C, okay, to copy it, and then you can paste it straight into a Google Doc. Okay, so that part is relatively easy, cutting and pasting a chart like that. Okay, we do need to highlight it, however, to make the graph. Okay, so if you can start up there and highlight all of the data that we've just entered. And then you're going to go up to Insert. Okay, so you can see Insert is right up here. Click on that, and the drop-down menu comes down. What we want to do is insert what it says here, Chart. All right, so if you click on that, this big dialog is going to come up. Okay, now Google Sheets will recommend what it thinks is a good chart format for you, but it's never the right one. Okay, unfortunately. So what we want to do here first is that we want to go to the chart type. So you see right now Start is highlighted. We want to go over to Chart. Okay, and we want a scatter plot. Okay, so that's right down below bar here. Okay, we want to click on Scatter, and as soon as you click on that, you get these two options, a bubble chart or a scatter chart. The bubble chart's points are way too big to be effective, so we want to pick Scatter. Okay, so we pick Scatter, and here we see our data. Okay, it's all drawn on there. Now, is this graph, according to what we learned yesterday, complete? What's it missing? Taylor? It's missing the labels on the axes. It's missing a good title, because chart title's not really a very fitting title for a graph. Okay, it's missing units, right? All of that kind of stuff. So what we want to do is now we want to customize this. Okay, so we click on Customize, and you get all of these options here. So you're going to slowly kind of scroll down and fill things in. Right here, the first thing that comes up is Chart Title. Right, so what we want to do is put in the appropriate title here. Okay. I don't know, something like that, because they're stretching the rubber band out. You can call it whatever you want. Rubber band graph would probably also be fine. Okay, so I got that. I can change, how it looks. I can underline it or italicize it or whatever, but I don't really need to do that. It's fine, probably the way it is. Okay, and then we just keep going down the. As soon as you click on that, obviously it changes that. Okay, we want to just keep scrolling down here till we get to Axis. Right? The axis right now, it's saying that we're working on the horizontal or the x-axis. So now we can put in a label for that. So you see here, horizontal axis, and then there's a title field. We're going to put in the title. Okay, for that axis, what's on the x-axis? Force. Okay. Okay, so we got force here, and we got it in newtons. Okay. Don't have to write the full name. I did, whatever. All right, so we're going to call that in newtons, and then we got a few options here for our horizontal axis. Okay, the one that you'll probably change most often after the title is the grid lines. Right now, only the major grid lines are in, so you only have a grid line every 5 newtons. I'd say you probably want more than that. So we can go down and we can make the major grid lines every 2 if we want. Okay. Or we can make them every 5 the way they had it. I put in minor grid lines every number. Okay, just so that I get lots of grid lines. It gives me more opportunities. Just looks like a better graph. Okay, and then that's about all I need for the horizontal axis. So I'm going to go back up here where it said Axis Horizontal, and I'm going to click on that field so that I can do the stuff for the vertical one. Okay, so if I click here, I get left vertical, and I can put in my label for the left vertical axis, which was going to be length in centimeters. And again, I'm probably going to put in minor grid lines just so I get more grid, okay, on my graph. Okay, how are we doing on that so far? Is everybody at the same point as me? All right. Now, what does this graph still need? The line of best fit, right? Okay, so here's where we put that in. We go down a little bit further, and we've got this option here that says series. We can make the points different colors. We can make them bigger or smaller if we want, but usually we just kind of leave them where they are. But you'll see here, one of your options is trend line. Okay, that's what they call the best fit line in Google Sheets. So what we go over is we go over to here and we click on this, and it gives us a few options. Okay, we can put in a linear trend line, an exponential, or a polynomial. These two bottom ones, it'll draw a curve, and we don't want that. Okay, we want a line, linear. So we click on that, and it draws our line of best fit for us. So we don't have to worry about having a ruler. We know it got put in the right place. Okay, that's your line of best fit. Now, if I got a few other options after I did that. Okay, now it says here that you can get a label for it. If you click on where it says custom, it says one of the options is use equation. That's going to give you the y equals mx plus b equation for that line. So now if you look over here, it says that y equals 2 times x plus 6.5. Basically, that means this is the slope. It gave you the slope. Okay, so when you put in the equation, the slope of this graph is 2. Right? It does the work for you. Isn't that sweet? Yeah. Okay, saves you a lot of work. All right, so put it in there for you. And what's this number? The 6.5. That is the y-intercept. That's b. Right? So it's saying for any y value, any x value, here's the equation. Right? That's why y and x are still labeled as y and x in that equation. All right? Everybody following me on that one? Okay, making sense? Okay. Is that pretty straightforward? You okay? Okay. Clear as mud? Alright, we're going to try another set of data here, and then I'm going to show you how to graph multiple data sets on the same graph. Okay, it's not really any harder, it just takes a little longer to enter the data, right? And there's one or two little extra steps that you have to do. Okay, alright, so we'll close that one up. Okay, and yeah, one sec. Okay, I want you guys to do this data here. Okay, in this one, the number of sheets determines the thickness of the book. So number of sheets goes where? On the x, right? Number of sheets goes on the x. Thickness of the book goes on the y. No, just open up a new one. Yeah. Oh, yeah, guys. So to do this, sorry, that's what I was going to show you here. Okay. I'm just going to open up a new file here, right, and just make another graph. Okay. So I just click on plus here. Okay, and you can title this one now book thickness graph or something like that, just so it's got an appropriate title for you. All right. So I'll put that data back up there. Okay, and you guys can enter that data, and then I'll quickly enter it and build the graph as well. Okay. Okay, so let's walk through this one now. Okay, so we've got the book thickness data up here now. All right, a step I think a few people have forgotten is that before you can actually make a graph of this, you have to highlight the data you want Google Sheets to graph. If you don't tell it what data you want it to graph, it doesn't know what to do. Okay, so I click up here, highlight it all, right, and then I click Insert. I go down to Chart. Okay, and then I go to Charts and select the right kind, which is a scatter chart. All right, and then I pick scatter, and boom, there's my data. Right, now I can start customizing my graph with the proper title. Okay, so I call it book thickness graph. Okay, and then I can put labels on my axes. So on the horizontal axis, okay, we're going to call that number of sheets. And the units for that will be pages, okay, or something like that. Alright, and then I got to do the same thing for the vertical axis. So I go click left vertical, okay. And that was in millimeters. Okay, and then again, okay, we can click auto here. Oh, I don't like auto. It didn't do it the way I want. Oh, neither did that. There we go. That's better. Okay. So now we've got our grid lines on there. Okay, we've got our labels on there. Now we want to go down to series. Okay, where it says trend line. We click on that and we put in a linear one. Okay, we get that nice trend line there. Right, and it'll tell us here's the. If you actually just put your cursor over it, okay, it'll show you the equation for it as well. Y equals 0.15. Times x plus 0.5, or sorry, times 5. All right. Right. So when I've got that, okay, again I can put that in as part of my label, and it'll show up over here. Okay, and then I've got it all done. Hey, making sense to everybody? All right. Now we're gonna do one more thing here, and that is, what if I want to graph like 3 different subjects of the same experiment on the same graph? All right, because this is what we're going to be doing next week. We're going to have these carts that are going to go down the hallway in the atrium there, and we're going to graph how far they travel over the course of time. But we'd like to get all of them onto the same graph. We're running the same experiment on all of them. We want them all to be on the same graph. Okay, so what we got to do here is enter several sets of data, okay, into our chart. So all I'm going to do is open up that file because I have it pre-made. Okay, and I'm just calling it practice graph. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is enter data so that you have this in a new Google Sheets file so it looks just like this. All right, so enter data so you've got this data, and then I'll show you how to do the graph of multiple data sets. So if I want to graph multiple data sets on the same graph, okay, it starts out pretty much the same as the last time. We just highlight all the data. Okay, and then we go to insert again, and we go down to chart, same as we did before. Okay, and we want, okay, again the scatter chart. Okay, you can see now that it's got all 3 sets on the same graph. Okay, so the only thing that's really going to be different here, guys, okay, when we go to customize is that in order for it to draw a trend line or a best fit line for each set of data, you'll notice now that series has all 3 options in. Okay, so if I want to draw a trend line for cart 1, I make sure cart 1's highlighted, and then I go linear. And then I do the same thing, I highlight cart 2, and I say that I want linear trend line for that. Okay, and cart 3, same thing. That way it draws trend lines for each one separately. Okay, everything else is the same. So you label the axes the same way, you give it a title in the same way. All right, so if we go up to here and we say instead of horizontal axis title, okay, that was a graph of distance and time, so we're going to say that this is time, and it was in seconds. Okay, and then we'll go up and do the same thing for the vertical. It was distance in meters. Okay, and then we've got our graph there, and again, if we want, we can say okay, that we can label them with their equation as well. So if we go back down to series, we can get the equation for each line. Okay, and then we got a graph with multiple data sets on it. Okay, right with that? You look confused. Oh, you don't have your glasses on. All right. So next week, right, we're gonna probably on Monday do a lab, okay, where we run the carts down the hallway so we get some real data. Okay, we'll put the graphs together, do the lab report, etc., do some analysis, and then what we're gonna start doing after that is looking at specific kinds of graphs and what we can calculate, what we can read, okay, those kind of things off of them. All right, so that'll be most of next week is looking at interpretation of graphs. Okay. Everybody with me there? All right. We've got what, about 10 minutes or so left in class. Okay, so you can keep the Chromebooks and you can look some stuff up if you really, really want to. Okay. Okay, so if I want to now move this over, okay, so I want to put this in, so I click Insert now that everything is constructed. Okay, I click Insert, and it puts the graph essentially on top of the spreadsheet that I was working on. Okay, if I click on this arrow up here, okay, I can say to copy chart, and that's what I want to do, copy it. Okay, and then I can open up like a Google Doc. All right, so if I go, and I just open up Docs here, just open up a new file. Do you mind? Okay, so now I can just click in here, okay, to paste it, and it'll paste into my Google Doc. All right, so that's how you would move it from Google Sheets to a lab report, okay, because you get that Google Doc lab report template from me, right? That's where it's going to have to go. So you build that graph, and then you insert it into your Google Doc like so. All right, just so everyone realizes how that works as well.